My name is Lauren. I'm 29 years old, live in the suburbs of Ohio, and I'm a mom to the most amazing, curious, endlessly energetic 2-year-old boy named Eli. He was born 5 weeks early, spent the first month of his life in the NICU, and we've been on alert ever since. Eli's got what the doctors call environmental hypersensitivity, especially when it comes to cigarette smoke. Not just the obvious secondhand smoke, he reacts to third-hand smoke. That means even residual tobacco particles left on clothes, hair, and skin can trigger wheezing, rashes, and in some cases, breathing issues. It's terrifying, and it's real. I didn't used to be that mom. I didn't want to be the overbearing, neurotic allergy mom that social media loves to mock. But when your toddler's lips start turning blue and he's clawing at his throat, you stop giving a damn about what people think and start protecting your kid with everything you've got. Which brings me to my older sister, Michelle. She's 34, single, loud, impulsive, unapologetic, the kind of person who swears at drive-through workers and brags about it later. She's been a smoker since she was 18, and honestly, it's part of her whole brand. The leather jacket, the beat-up Dodge Challenger, the whiskey, the biker bar friends, all of it. She's also Eli's aunt. And unfortunately, she thinks my boundaries around Eli's health are just a symptom of my being a soft-ass millennial mom. It all blew up last week. It was a Saturday afternoon, around 3 p.m., Eli had just gone down for a nap after a long morning of playing at the park. My husband Jake was working a weekend shift at the fire station. I was folding laundry and enjoying the quiet when Michelle texted me. "Yo. I'm nearby. Mind if I swing by for a sec?" I stared at the screen for a moment. We hadn't made plans, and while I appreciated the spontaneity, I also knew what this could lead to. Still, trying to keep the peace, I replied. "Sure, you can stop by, just a reminder, if you've smoked today, you'll need to change before coming in. You know how Eli is." She replied with a thumbs up and an eye roll emoji. I should have taken that as a red flag. 10 minutes later, the doorbell rang. I opened the door, and there she was, standing on the porch in a thick, gray hoodie, ripped jeans, her usual smoky eye makeup, and a cigarette but still smoldering between her fingers. She smiled like nothing was wrong. "Hey sis." I blinked. "Michelle. I thought you understood. You can't come in like that." She looked confused, like I was speaking another language. "Like what?" "You just smoked. I can smell it from here." Michelle rolled her eyes so hard I could practically hear them. "Oh my God, Lauren. It was one cigarette. Outside. I haven't smoked inside in years. That's not the point. The smoke clings to your clothes, your hair. I've literally been here 2 seconds and you're already on me? Come on, Laur. I'm not trying to start anything," I said calmly. "I just can't let you inside smelling like that. Eli's napping, but even after he wakes up, I won't take chances. You know how sensitive he is." She narrowed her eyes at me. "You're being ridiculous. I can get you some of Jake's clean clothes if you want to change. Or we can sit on the porch." "Let me get this straight," she said, crossing her arms. "You're not going to let me into my own sister's house because I had a cigarette earlier today? I'm not doing this to hurt you. I'm doing this to protect my son." Michelle scoffed. "Your son? Right. You act like I'm walking in with a lit cigar. Jesus, Lauren. This is why people don't like coming over here. You treat everyone like biohazards." I tried not to react. "It's not personal. It's medical. I can show you the doctor's notes if you want." "Oh, don't start waving around your little allergy reports like they're gospel," she snapped. "Back in our day, nobody gave a shit about this stuff and we all turned out fine." "Actually, I didn't turn out fine," I said. "You remember my asthma, right? The hospital visits? The fact that I couldn't be around Uncle Ray without needing my inhaler? That was different. It really wasn't. At that point, Michelle threw her hands in the air. You know what? I don't have time for this guilt-trippy nonsense. Enjoy your sterile little bubble. I hope Eli grows up learning how to breathe without his mother panicking every 5 seconds. She turned on her heel and stomped down the porch stairs. I watched her get into her car, rev the engine way too loud, and peel off without another word. I stood there for a moment, shaken. Not angry. Just tired. I thought she understood. I thought we'd finally been making progress, after the last Thanksgiving argument over scented candles and air purifiers. Apparently not. I didn't expect her to apologize. But I also didn't expect what came next. The texts started trickling in that evening. My mom messaged. Michelle said you made her feel unwelcome. I hope that's not true. Then my Aunt Brenda. I heard about the drama today. I get that Eli has allergies, but maybe don't treat people like lepers. And my cousin Krista. If my sister came over, I'd at least let her say hi to her nephew. Just saying. Within hours, it became clear that Michelle had spun her version of the story to the entire family, and made it sound like I'd slammed the door in her face for no reason. I didn't even try to defend myself. I was too exhausted. Jake came home late that night and I told him everything. He just hugged me and said, "You did the right thing. Screw what they think." But still. The silence from the people who should have had my back, the guilt-tripping, the passive-aggressive texts, it all made me feel like I was the villain. Like I was being punished for protecting my child. But then, a week later, everything changed. The day everything came crashing down started like any other. It was the following Saturday, exactly a week after Michelle's porch tantrum. Eli woke up early, as usual, babbling to himself in his crib. I made him breakfast, oatmeal with blueberries and a touch of cinnamon, which he devoured while wearing half of it on his cheeks. Jake was off that day, and we were planning a lazy afternoon together. It was one of those humid Midwestern July mornings where the air feels like warm syrup, and all you want is a fan and iced tea. At around noon, my mom texted. Thinking of stopping by with Aunt Brenda and Krista. Just a quick hello. I froze. Not because I didn't want to see them, I did. But because I didn't trust them not to show up after smoking. Especially Brenda. She's never been without a menthol in her purse, and I've watched her light one up the second she steps out of church. I replied politely. You're welcome to, just please remember the no-smoke rule. No one can come in unless they've been smoke-free for a few hours and wear fresh clothes. Eli's allergies are too serious. No response. Jake raised an eyebrow when I told him. You think they'll actually follow that? Probably not, I admitted. But I warned them. They showed up at 1:45 p.m. I opened the front door and immediately knew this was going to be a problem. Aunt Brenda was wearing her usual perfume and ashtray combo, Krista looked annoyed to even be there, and my mom, bless her, had clearly tried. But she still smelled faintly like tobacco and dryer sheets, a smell I'd come to dread. Hi honey, my mom said cheerfully, stepping forward to hug me. I didn't move. You all smell like smoke. Brenda rolled her eyes. Jesus Christ. I told you. Eli's allergies. He's inside, right? Krista cut in. He's not even near us. It lingers in the air, I said, holding my ground. If you want, I have clean shirts and scrubs you can change into, and you can wash up in the guest bathroom. You want us to scrub down before seeing your kid? Brenda scoffed. What is this, a crime lab? Jake stepped behind me at that point. He didn't say anything. He just looked at them, arms folded. That was enough. I'm not trying to insult anyone, I said. But Eli's health comes first. Well then, Krista said sharply, maybe you should keep him in a bubble and stop inviting people to your chemical prison. Then they turned and left. Just like that. No goodbyes. No, we understand. No concern. And I was left standing there with a rising ache in my chest, not sadness, not regret, just a deep, bitter frustration that even now, after explaining and explaining, they still didn't care. That night, Eli started coughing. It was dry at first. I didn't panic, he'd had a runny nose earlier in the week, and I assumed it was just the tail end of a toddler cold. But then he started rubbing his eyes. His skin developed tiny red splotches. He became clingy and whiny, tugging at his chest. By midnight, he was wheezing. I gave him his inhaler, propped him up, put the humidifier on full blast, but nothing was working. His little body was trembling, his lips were tinged blue, and he was gasping more than breathing. Jake didn't even hesitate. He grabbed the keys while I bundled Eli into a blanket. We raced to the ER, where they rushed him straight through triage. We ended up in the pediatric emergency ward for 7 hours. Eli had what the doctor called an acute allergic respiratory episode, likely caused by third-hand smoke exposure. His vitals had dipped, and they had to administer albuterol through a nebulizer, antihistamines, steroids. Watching my baby writhe and cry under an oxygen mask broke something in me. The attending physician asked if we'd had visitors recently. I told him yes. I told him they hadn't smoked around Eli, but they'd clearly come in with smoke on their clothes. He nodded grimly. That's enough. With his condition, that residue is more than sufficient to cause this kind of reaction. You did the right thing trying to prevent it. We were discharged around 9 a.m. I hadn't slept. Neither had Jake. Eli had calmed by then, his breathing stable, but he was pale and weak and curled against me like a kitten. When we got home, I looked around at our house, at the air purifiers, the "and no smoking" sign on the door, the hypoallergenic pillow covers, and I didn't feel overprotective. I felt vindicated. So I did something I don't usually do. I posted on Facebook. And not a little rant, either. I posted everything. A long post with timestamps. A photo of Eli in the hospital bed, hooked up to monitors, his tiny chest rising and falling under the oxygen mask. I included the ER paperwork. I even quoted what the doctor told us about third-hand smoke. I ended the post with this. If you think I'm being dramatic, this is what the drama looks like. This is what happens when people think their cigarette break matters more than my son breathing. So yeah, if you smell like smoke, you're not coming in my house. Ever again. No exceptions. I don't care if you're family. I don't care if you think I'm rude. You can either wash your damn clothes or stay away. I'm done explaining. By the next day, the post had over 2,000 shares. The comments flooded in. Messages from other allergy moms, nurses, pediatricians, strangers who had no clue third-hand smoke was even a thing. People were furious, not at me, but at my family. There were threads of people tagging their own relatives, saying, "Read this. This is why I ask you to change shirts before holding my baby." I expected some backlash. But it never came. Not from my mom. Not from Brenda. Not from Krista. Not even from Michelle. Just silence. Not a text. Not a call. Not a comment. Not even a "seen" notification. And in that silence, something shifted. Because now the world had seen what I'd been trying to explain for years. And they finally believed me. The morning after the post went viral, I woke up to over 300 notifications. Messages. Comments. Shares. DMs from strangers. Fellow parents, nurses, even a pulmonologist messaged me thanking me for bringing awareness to third-hand smoke. One woman said her sister thought she was being neurotic for making guests change clothes before seeing her immunocompromised baby, until she saw my post. Another mom shared that her daughter went into anaphylactic shock after hugging her smoking uncle. I read every single message. My fingers trembled. Not because I was scared, but because for the first time in years, I didn't feel crazy. Jake sat beside me, scrolling through his own phone, jaw tightening. People are pissed, he said. In a good way. I nodded. About time. Then I opened the family group chat. Still nothing. No one had said a single word. No reaction. No rebuttal. Not even a sarcastic emoji. Just dead, cold silence. I waited all morning. I didn't want an apology, I'd given up on that years ago. But I did expect something. A text from Mom, maybe a backpedaling, we didn't realize it was that bad. Even a snide message from Krista about airing dirty laundry online. But nothing came. Not from Michelle, not from anyone. It was like I didn't exist anymore. And I'll be honest, it messed with me. Because when someone yells at you, you still exist to them. When someone calls you dramatic, or strict, or overprotective, they're engaging. They're acknowledging your boundaries, even if they disrespect them. But when they go silent, that's when they've decided your truth is inconvenient. That you're too loud to argue with, too public to confront. That it's easier to pretend you're not part of the family at all. It was cowardice wrapped in avoidance. Later that afternoon, my mom finally broke the silence, not with a call, not with a message to me, but with a Facebook post of her own. A vague, boomer-style one. White text on a floral background. Sometimes it hurts when the people you love most think the worst of you. Broken heart, we all make mistakes. Family should be a safe place. No names. No tags. But everyone in the comments knew. Brenda wrote. You didn't deserve that public shaming, sis. So much for grace and forgiveness. Krista added. Gotta love when people post photos of babies in hospitals for likes. Face with rolling eyes. Michelle? Nothing. No comment, no post. Just a profile picture update, a selfie with sunglasses and a caption that read. Still standing. Still smoking. Still not sorry. I didn't respond to any of it. I didn't need to. The comments section under my original post kept growing, thousands of people, siding with me, sharing their own horror stories about family refusing to take health boundaries seriously. One woman wrote. My nephew died from RSV. People think they're invincible until they're not. You did the right thing. You're the kind of mom your kid will thank later. Another said. You're not dramatic. You're protective. And that's the difference between surviving and mourning. I screenshot a few of them and saved them. Not out of vanity, but because I knew, that there'd come a moment when I'd doubt myself again. When I'd hear that familiar guilt whisper, was I too harsh? Did I overreact? And I wanted to remember what truth looked like. That evening, while I was putting Eli to bed, Jake came into the room holding his phone. You might want to see this, he said. He handed it to me. It was a private message, from someone I didn't know at first glance. Turns out, it was Michelle's ex-boyfriend. Someone she dated years ago, who had apparently seen the post through a mutual connection. Hey, I don't want to stir the pot, but I saw what your family's doing and I just wanted to say, Michelle hasn't changed. She smoked around my niece all the time when we were dating. Lied about quitting. Told me I was being manipulated by doctors. She's toxic. Don't let them gaslight you. My heart sank. Not because I was surprised, but because it confirmed something I hadn't said out loud yet. Michelle had never believed me about Eli's allergies. Not really. Not in the way that matters. To her, it was just another example of me being soft, fragile, millennial snowflake, Lauren. And that meant her behavior hadn't just been disrespectful. It had been intentional. I sat in Eli's room after he fell asleep, watching him breathe, his chest rising and falling in peaceful rhythm, and I thought. They chose this. Not once. Not twice. But over and over again. They chose to believe Michelle's version of the world because it was easier. Because in that version, no one had to change their habits. No one had to feel guilty. No one had to acknowledge that maybe, just maybe, they were endangering a child out of sheer convenience. I didn't post again that night. I didn't clap back. I didn't make a scene. But I did do something I hadn't done in a long time. I blocked them. One by one, Mom, Brenda, Krista, even Michelle. Not muted. Not snoozed. Blocked. Because I realized, silence can be a weapon. But so can cutting it off. That weekend, Jake and I bought a new air purifier for the nursery. We replaced the rugs, steamed the couch, washed every blanket and toy Eli had touched. And then, for the first time in a long while, we breathed easy. It's strange how quickly silence can turn into routine. After I blocked Michelle and the rest of them, something inside me unclenched, like a muscle I hadn't realized was permanently tensed finally let go. The absence of their constant needling, the defensive texts, the subtle guilt trips cloaked in, just trying to help, all of it evaporated. Our home felt quieter. Cleaner. Not just in the literal sense, but emotionally. Still, there was grief in that silence. Not the sobbing on the kitchen floor kind, but something slower. Quieter. It came in moments, when Eli reached for a toy someone had given him last Christmas. When Jake casually mentioned a family barbecue we used to attend every summer. When I found a photo on my phone of Michelle holding newborn Eli, back when I still believed she'd show up for him. I didn't cry. I didn't even flinch. I just stared at the photo and felt tired. A few days after the post exploded, the messages kept coming. A local parenting blog picked it up, and suddenly I was being asked if I'd be open to interviews. I declined, politely, because I didn't want to turn our pain into a spectacle. I didn't post for clout. I posted because I was desperate. Because I wanted my voice heard somewhere, if not by my family. But the most unexpected message came on a Wednesday night, just after I'd finished reading Goodnight Moon for the third time that evening. It was from Tina. Tina is my dad's sister, technically my aunt, though we've barely spoken since Dad passed away 8 years ago. She and my mom had a falling out over something I never fully understood. Thanksgiving politics, I think. They'd both always said it was no big deal, while also refusing to be in the same room since 2017. Tina's message was simple. I saw your post. I'm so sorry they made you feel like the villain for doing what a mother should. I believe you. And I'm proud of you. I stared at my screen for a solid minute before responding. Thank you. I didn't expect anyone in the family to say that. She replied within seconds. That's because most of them don't know how to admit when they're wrong. But I do. I should have reached out sooner. Want to grab coffee this weekend? And just like that, a line that had been broken for nearly a decade began to stitch itself back together. We met at a local cafe that Saturday, a quiet place with lemon scones and patio seating. Tina had aged, but gracefully. Her hair was mostly gray now, but she wore it confidently. She greeted me with a warm hug and no perfume. I hadn't asked, but she'd clearly read enough to know better. I've got a granddaughter, she said, sipping her latte. 5 months old. Her name's Maddie. Her mom is very strict. And now I get it. This whole thing. It opened my eyes. We talked for hours. Not just about Eli, or allergies, or Michelle's nonsense, but about grief, about Dad, about the way our family had stopped knowing how to communicate without sarcasm and defensiveness. She told me things I hadn't heard before, like how Michelle had mocked my asthma as a teenager behind my back. How Brenda always rolled her eyes when I brought my own food to family dinners due to sensitivities. They've always punished you for being sensitive, Tina said gently. But they're confusing sensitivity with weakness. And that's where they're wrong. When I got home, Jake could tell something had shifted. You're lighter, he said, brushing a strand of hair behind my ear. I had someone tell me I wasn't crazy today, I said. He smiled. I've been telling you that for years. And yet, hearing it from inside the family, that mattered more than I expected. The next week, I started drawing new lines. Real ones. We created a visitor policy and taped it to the front door. Not aggressive, just clear. To our visitors. If you have smoked in the past 4 hours, we ask that you not enter the home. Please wear clean clothes free from smoke or strong fragrances. If unsure, we're happy to visit outside. We appreciate your understanding and your respect for Eli's health. I emailed it to extended family, too. Even the ones I hadn't blocked. No emotion. No drama. Just facts. And then something strange happened. My cousin Drew, Krista's brother, texted me the next day. Hey. Saw the post. Didn't know it was that serious. I'm sorry. That shit looked scary. I quit vaping last month. Let me know if you ever want to hang out. 2 days later, Aunt Carol sent flowers with a note that read. I had no idea. Thank you for educating me. Eli's lucky to have you. It was like people were finally peeling away from the toxic gravitational pull of my mother and Michelle, like the spell was breaking. Not all at once. But quietly. Subtly. I didn't gloat. I didn't broadcast it. Because this wasn't about winning. There was no scoreboard. No courtroom verdict. This was about building a home where Eli could breathe. Where I could breathe. Without shame. Without fear. Without needing to explain why protecting my child made me the bad guy. And yet, just as things began to settle, a message arrived that brought all the noise crashing back. Not a text. A letter. Handwritten. Folded into thirds. No return address, but I recognized the cursive immediately. It was from Michelle. The letter arrived on a Thursday afternoon, tucked between a stack of junk mail and a catalog I hadn't subscribed to in years. At first I didn't even notice it. I was juggling Eli on my hip while trying to open the front door with one hand and not drop the groceries with the other. The envelope fell to the floor, slid under the mat slightly, and I didn't see it until much later, after Eli was napping and the house had settled into that rare, golden hour hush. I almost threw it out. No return address. No markings. Just my name, Lauren, written in a looping script I hadn't seen in years but recognized instantly. Michelle had always written like someone raised on diary pages and angry love letters, big, emotional, just barely legible. I stared at it for a long time. My first instinct was to toss it, unread. Just the sight of her handwriting made my shoulders tense. But something about the weight of it in my hand made me pause. It was thick, multiple pages, and I could feel the unevenness of ink against the paper. This wasn't a scribbled apology. Whatever it was, she had meant it. I sat down at the kitchen table, heart thudding harder than I cared to admit, and unfolded the first page. Lauren. I know I'm probably the last person you want to hear from. I wouldn't blame you for tearing this up without reading it. Hell, maybe I hope you do. Maybe it's easier that way. But I've been sitting on this for days, trying to figure out how to say something that won't sound like bullshit. I saw your post. I saw the photos. I read the whole damn thing. And for what it's worth, I'm sorry. I stopped reading for a second. Not because of what she wrote, but because of how she wrote it. No sarcasm. No deflection. Not yet. You were right. About all of it. I didn't believe you about the allergies. Not really. I thought you were being dramatic. I thought you were using Eli as an excuse to control everything and push me out. And that's on me. That's me projecting, because you've always been the together one, and I've always been the mess who couldn't keep a job or a boyfriend or a clean car. When I showed up that day, I wanted a fight. I was angry before I even got out of the car. You didn't make me feel like shit, I already did. You just gave me a mirror I didn't want to look into. And I'm not going to lie and say I've suddenly changed. I still smoke. Still drink. Still run my mouth when I shouldn't. But I also haven't been able to sleep since I saw that picture of Eli in the hospital bed. That image is burned into my brain. Not because of what happened, but because I caused it. I'm not writing to beg forgiveness. I know I don't deserve it. I just wanted to say the words. Without an audience. Without Facebook. Without turning it into another performance. I paused. My throat had gone dry. I hadn't realized I was gripping the letter so tightly until I noticed the crease starting to tear between my fingers. I loosened my grip and kept reading. I told Mom you were overreacting. I told Brenda and Krista that you were trying to go viral. And when you actually did, I told myself you'd calm down and this would all blow over. But it didn't. And instead of reaching out, I went quiet. Like a coward. The truth is, I didn't know how to admit that I was wrong. I still don't. But I'm trying. I don't expect us to fix anything. I'm not asking to see Eli. I just wanted you to know that I hear you now. You protected your son. I mocked you for it. And I'll live with that. I hope one day you'll remember something good about me. Even if it's just a memory from when we were kids, watching cartoons in the living room, stealing Mom's ice cream. Before life turned us into strangers. I'm sorry I let you down. Michelle. There was no second letter. No follow-up. Just her signature at the bottom, big and final, like a woman signing off on her own guilt. I sat there in stunned silence for a long time. I reread the letter 3 times. Every word. Every raw, imperfect line. And the thing that hit me hardest? It didn't feel like an apology wrapped in excuses. It felt like grief. Like the kind of sorrow that only shows up once you've burned every bridge and the flames have cooled, leaving nothing but scorched wood and silence. Jake came home an hour later. He found me still at the kitchen table, the letter folded neatly in front of me like a holy relic. You okay? He asked gently. I nodded. She wrote me a letter. He sat down across from me. Do you want to talk about it? I hesitated. Then I handed it to him. He read it slowly, brows furrowed, expression unreadable. When he finished, he folded it back up and placed it in my hands again. I believe she means it, he said. Yeah, I whispered. Me too. Does that change anything? I looked toward Eli's room, where the baby monitor showed him curled up, snoring softly, his stuffed giraffe clutched tight in one arm. No, I said. But it matters. Jake reached across the table, took my hand, and gave it a gentle squeeze. You don't have to make space for her again. You don't owe her that. I know. But still, I put the letter in a drawer instead of the trash. Not because I forgave her. But because somewhere, buried in all that pain and broken history, there was something worth remembering. Even if we never spoke again. Summer began to fade, but the heat hadn't relented. The Ohio air was thick, clinging, and heavy. The kind of weather where sound carries weird, distant lawnmowers sounded closer, and neighbors' voices drifted across yards like ghosts. But inside our house, things were quiet. Still. Peaceful. It had been nearly 3 weeks since Michelle's letter. I hadn't responded. I hadn't unblocked her. I hadn't told anyone else in the family that she'd written. The letter stayed folded in the drawer next to Eli's medical documents, tucked between allergy reports and emergency contact lists. Not out of sentiment, but out of proof. In case she ever said she didn't. But it lingered in my mind. More than I wanted it to. Some days, I'd find myself wondering if she was still smoking her way through late nights at that biker bar, if she told her friends she used to have a sister. If she ever thought about Eli, or if her guilt had burned itself out by now. The letter felt like a closing door that didn't quite shut. No hinges. Just wind. Always just a little bit ajar. Still, life didn't stop. And neither did Eli. At 2.5, he was talking more, running faster, asking, why, 27 times an hour. He was obsessed with garbage trucks, could name 5 types of dinosaurs, and refused to eat anything green unless it was in the shape of a star. Every day he made it easier to breathe, not because things got lighter, but because he did. Because the burden of defending him felt less like weight and more like purpose. Jake and I talked about moving, not far, just to a different neighborhood, closer to his station, with fewer drop-ins from family who still didn't know how to apologize. The idea of a fresh start was tempting. A new space. New air. New walls that hadn't heard arguments or held the tension of a sister stomping down the steps while calling me a psycho. But something kept us here. Maybe it was stubbornness. Maybe it was the fact that I had fought for this space, every carpet shampooed after a smoky visitor, every air filter humming day and night, until it finally felt like ours. And then, one morning, something shifted. It started small, like most changes do. Eli and I were walking to the park when I saw Mrs. O'Hara, our next-door neighbor, unloading groceries from her car. She waved me over. Mrs. O'Hara was in her 70s, always wore oversized sunglasses, and made cookies that could end wars. "I read that thing you posted," she said, placing a watermelon in her trunk like it weighed nothing. "The one about the smoke." I had no idea it could be that serious. I blinked. "Wait, you read that?" She laughed. "Sweetheart, everyone in the neighborhood Facebook group did. That post made the rounds. One of the grandmas screenshotted it and emailed it to her son-in-law." I felt heat crawl up my neck. "Oh. I didn't realize it got that far." "Well," she said, adjusting her sunglasses, "it made me put up a little sign on my front porch. No smoking beyond this point. Grandbaby on the premises." My chest did that weird squeeze thing, the one where relief and grief meet in the middle. "That's amazing," I said, genuinely smiling. "Thank you." Later that week, at the park, a mom I'd never met before approached me while Eli was climbing the slide backward. "You're the one with the post about the smoke kid, right?" I tensed, bracing for mockery. But she just grinned. "I used it to talk to my in-laws. They used to think I was being ridiculous. But your story scared them straight." That phrase, "scared them straight," stuck with me. Because I wasn't trying to scare anyone. I was just trying to be heard. And now, somehow, I was. From there, something strange happened. Not viral, not headline-worthy, just small ripples. A dad at Storytime asked me about air purifiers. A church friend offered to bring food and asked, anything I should avoid because of Eli? The local preschool director emailed me and asked if I'd consider helping them design an allergy-aware policy. People began to ask questions instead of rolling their eyes. They listened. They changed. Not everyone, of course not. My own mother still hadn't reached out. Brenda hadn't spoken a word. Krista posted a passive-aggressive meme that said, "Some people will weaponize motherhood like a badge," and tagged no one, but I didn't need a name. But here's the thing, I didn't need them anymore. Because something unexpected had formed in their place. A different kind of family. Jake and I started having dinner every Sunday with Tina and her husband. She always texted beforehand, asking about fragrances and food safety. Her granddaughter Maddie and Eli became instant co-conspirators, passing Cheerios back and forth in their high chairs and babbling like they were planning a heist. Drew, Krista's brother, began dropping by on weekends to play catch with Eli and talk to Jake about boring car stuff. He always brought clean clothes in a bag, changed in the garage before coming inside, and never mentioned the rest of the family. And then there were the online friends, people I'd never met in real life, but who messaged regularly. Moms who sent memes. Nurses who sent articles. People who'd once felt just as isolated, now saying, "Hey. I see you." It didn't replace the family I'd lost. But it softened the shape of the whole. One night, after putting Eli down, I sat on the porch with Jake and watched the sun dip behind the trees. The air was warm but breathable. Still. Gentle. "I never thought we'd get here," I said. Jake took a long sip of his iced tea. Where's here? This kind of peace, I said. Not just the silence. But the kind where no one's asking me to apologize for keeping my son alive. He nodded. You carved that peace with a scalpel. I laughed. You mean like a battle axe? Same difference. And then, as if summoned by our calm, a notification buzzed on my phone. A new message. From an unfamiliar name. But I recognized the profile picture instantly. Krista's husband. The message was sitting there on my screen, quiet and unassuming. Hey. I don't know if it's my place, but I thought you should see something. I stared at it for a solid minute, thumb hovering above the screen. It was from Ryan, Krista's husband. We'd only met a handful of times, cookouts, weddings, the kind of family events where he stood on the sidelines while Krista carried the conversation like a weapon. He'd always seemed quiet. Polite. The kind of man who says, yes, dear, and fades into the wallpaper. I didn't respond right away. But then the second message came through. I screenshotted it. I just couldn't let them keep talking like that. Attached was a series of images. I clicked, and the world went still. It was a group chat. A private one. Mom, Brenda, Krista, and, unsurprisingly, Michelle. The messages weren't vague this time. They weren't passive-aggressive or cloaked in fake concern. They were cruel. Krista, she thinks she's some kind of hero now. Just wait until Eli grows up and tells her she ruined his childhood with her paranoia. Brenda, honestly, I've known kids with worse issues and their moms didn't make it their whole personality. Michelle, she weaponized her own kid. It's sick. Who posts hospital photos to score likes? That baby's going to grow up neurotic as hell. Mom, it's attention-seeking. She always needed an audience. Eli's just the new stage. I couldn't breathe. My ears rang, and for a second, I genuinely thought I might throw up. Not because I was surprised, I wasn't. But because this was what they said behind closed doors. This was what they really thought. And the worst part? This chat was active. The last message had been sent just 2 days ago. Ryan had included one more message at the bottom of the thread. For what it's worth, I think what they're doing is disgusting. Krista talks about you like you're some kind of cult leader. It got to a point where I couldn't listen anymore. I'm sorry. I know I probably just made everything worse. No. No, he hadn't. He'd handed me the truth, the kind no one ever volunteers. The kind people protect themselves from, wrap in civility and fake smiles. Jake found me 30 minutes later, still at the kitchen table, the phone in my hand like it had fused to my skin. Lauren, he said softly. What happened? I showed him. He didn't say anything for a long time. Then, well, shit. We sat there in silence, the words on the screen pulsing in my head. Attention-seeking. Neurotic. Weaponizing my child. I had spent years being polite. Careful. Patient. Explaining myself over and over again to people who had never, not once, listened with the intent to understand. And still, some small, bruised part of me had held out hope that somewhere beneath all the dismissiveness was something redeemable. Some shared humanity. Some broken but reparable thread. But there it was. Snapped. Publicly, they had gone quiet. Privately, they had just changed the venue. I didn't respond to Ryan. Not right away. I didn't know what to say. Instead, I scrolled up and took screenshots of every message. Every cruel word. Every emoji. Every timestamp. Not to post. Not to shame. To remember. That night, I sat on the couch with Jake while Eli slept 2 doors away. We didn't talk for a while. We just sat in the hush of the house we'd fought to protect. I always wondered if we were being too harsh, I said quietly. If blocking them was the right call. Jake turned toward me. And now? I looked down at the phone in my hand. Now I think we were too soft. The next morning, I replied to Ryan. Thank you for showing me. You didn't make anything worse. You gave me clarity. I hope you're okay, and if you ever need anything, my door is open. Seriously. He responded within minutes. Thank you. I don't know what to do anymore. I feel like I'm married into a family I don't recognize. I didn't have advice for him. That wasn't my role. But I did tell him this. You get to choose your peace. That's what I learned the hard way. The days that followed were quieter. More final, in a way. I stopped wondering if I was missing something. I stopped second-guessing whether they'd ever come around. They wouldn't. And I didn't want them to anymore. Tina came by that weekend with homemade lasagna and a new toy for Eli. I saw that look on your face, she said as soon as I opened the door. What happened? So I told her. Not everything, not the screenshots or the chat name, the real family nail polish, but the gist. The group thread. The comments. The way they dissected me like a problem to be solved rather than a sister, daughter, cousin. Tina listened without interrupting. She didn't gasp. She didn't say, I'm shocked, because she wasn't. Instead, she said something I hadn't expected. Good. Now there's nothing left to grieve. I blinked. What? She put her hands on my shoulders, looked me dead in the eye, and said, You spent years trying to get water from a stone, honey. Now you know the stone isn't just dry, it never had water to begin with. It hit me like a gut punch, because it was true. I hadn't lost anything. I just stopped pretending it was there. Later that night, after Eli had gone to bed and Jake was in the shower, I opened a blank document on my laptop. Not to write another post. Not to vent. But to begin drafting something for myself. A guide. Not for the public. Not for views. Just a document titled, How to Protect Your Child When Your Family Refuses to Listen. I had no idea if I'd ever share it. But I knew this, someone, somewhere, was going to be in my exact shoes. Someone would be told they were overreacting. That they were dramatic. That they were alienating family. And they'd need to hear from someone who survived it. Summer gave way to early fall in Ohio, when the air finally cooled enough to carry the scent of leaves and the hum of change. Eli had started pointing out colors on trees, shouting, Red one. Yellow one. That one's sleepy, whenever he saw a drooping branch. We went on long walks with hot cider in sippy cups and soft fleece jackets zipped to the chin. Life, somehow, had moved forward. But I hadn't forgotten. I'd finished writing that guide, How to Protect Your Child When Your Family Refuses to Listen. It was long. Messy. Emotional. Equal parts practical checklist and personal manifesto. I kept it private at first, just a file on my desktop. But then, one night, I decided to upload it, not as a post, but as a downloadable PDF on a parenting forum I frequented. I didn't expect much. Maybe a few clicks. A thank you or two. Within 48 hours, it had been downloaded 7,000 times. The messages poured in. Quiet mothers. Single dads. Grandparents raising their grandkids after the parents flaked out. People from every part of the country, even abroad, who said, This is what I needed. This is what no one ever told me I was allowed to do. One woman emailed. I printed this out and used it during a custody hearing. The judge read your words aloud in court. I just wanted you to know, you helped me keep my daughter safe. I cried in the laundry room when I read that one. Not from sadness. From relief. Because I hadn't just spoken into the void. I'd sent a flare. And people had answered back. But despite the new peace, the new community, the rebuilt connections with Tina and Drew and even Ryan, there was one door I hadn't closed. Michelle. The letter had sat in that drawer for 2 months. I never responded. She never followed up. No messages. No drama. Just that one raw, painful, too late letter that still felt like a bruise under my ribs. Part of me wondered if she'd expected forgiveness. If the silence was her answer. Or maybe she'd thought that was enough, that words on paper could undo years of disrespect, of recklessness, of standing on my porch and rolling her eyes while my son's lungs collapsed in my arms days later. But the truth was, I couldn't make peace with someone who had only just begun to realize they'd started a fire, while I'd already spent years putting it out. So I made a decision. I took the letter out, read it one last time, and walked it straight to the fireplace. I didn't burn it in anger. I burned it like a ritual. A closing. A signal to the universe, and to myself, that I didn't need any more pieces of Michelle in my home. Not her words. Not her guilt. Not her past. She could live in the memory of who she used to be, my sister, but she wouldn't have space in the life I was building now. Later that evening, I posted one final update. Just for the people who had followed the story since the beginning. Just for the strangers who had become something closer than blood. Eli's healthy. He just started a toddler tumbling class and thinks somersaults are the height of human achievement. Our home is peaceful. Our air is clean. Our boundaries are firm. And our family? It's not the one I was born into. It's the one I chose. To anyone who has ever been called overprotective, dramatic, or too much, I see you. You are not too much. You are exactly the mother your child needs. Close the door if you have to. Lock it. Build a window instead. Let the light in. Let new people find you. Let the ones who never took the time to understand finally live in the silence they gave you. Because you don't owe anyone access to your child, not even family. Especially not family. Protect your peace. Fiercely. And don't apologize for the air your child breathes. I didn't check the responses after that. Not because I didn't care. But because I didn't need the validation anymore. Eli woke up from his nap, cheeks flushed from sleep, his hair in wild tangles. I picked him up, and he snuggled against my chest, murmuring something about wanting apple slices and to watch the trash truck show. As I carried him to the kitchen, I glanced back once, at the hallway, the closed door, the hum of the air purifier we kept running on low, and I realized. That wasn't a battleground anymore. It was a sanctuary. My son's lungs were clear. So was my conscience. And the last door I closed? It stayed shut. Because on the other side of it, I found something better. A life where I didn't have to fight to be heard. Only to be present. And that was more than enough.